Welcome to Doom Scroll Patrol, the show where we doom scroll so you don't have to. Today, we cover a lot of ground. We're going to kick things off by talking about fatties in the military, going over to the laugh ride of child detention centers and coral bleaching. Then we talk about Gen Z being the most gullible generation in the world. Also, is socialism on the rise in the United States? And is Doge coming to Canada? I'm Aaron Hagee McKay.
I'm Harold Moss.
I'm Hannah Snape.
And I'm Sam Bleached Perez.
Bleached Anus Perez.
Stick around, you're not going to want to miss it.
Your continued patronage is very, very welcome.
Most important news first.
Yeah, the most important news first. Pete Hegseth wants to stop all the fat people from being in the military.
Have you seen America, Pete? Have you seen it?
So, as I was saying,
while he's not busy leaking military secrets to every intelligence agency on planet Earth, Pete Hegseth.
Yeah. Troops fighting in the unit that many of you will lead are capable, truly physically capable of doing what is necessary under fire. They need to be fit, not fat. Sharp, not shabby. Especially our leaders. And that's why we're reviewing how the department has maintained standards in the past, especially the last 4 years, and whether those standards have dropped, formally or informally.
Yeah, so but basically what he said is he emphasized the importance of troops being physically capable to perform necessary under fire. He said they need to be fit, not fat, sharp, not shabby, especially our leaders.
What? No, the leaders are the least important to be, they can be fat all they want. They're literally just sitting there pushing papers and making decisions.
Yeah.
Well, no, let's be honest. What is... Oh, sorry, keep going, Sam.
So he says, yeah, fit, not fat, sharp, not sloppy. Let's see. And then he wanted to maintain this high and great standard across the entire force. He said, obviously, you got to throw this in. Leave wokeness and weakness behind. So,
okay. This does feel like a how can I change the narrative now that I have basically accidentally did a treason twice? Like,
that we
leaking.
I know.
Twice,
I'll blame
two
the
treasons.
fats. These fat
Exactly.
It's the fatties and the brownies.
Yeah.
It's two types of brownies.
So,
And the ladies.
Yeah, which is great because I'm fat and brown. So, like, I ain't getting drafted.
Well, Sam, the problem is we might draft you for our side.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's I guess that's kind of a thing. If he wants like the white fit people and he wants to send them off to war to die, who you gonna be left with?
Right. But let's also be honest. This is what's really required for the current state of warfare.
You just brought up for those of you who are just listening, you just brought up a game controller. I believe that's a PS5 controller.
Yeah.
It's a PS5 controller.
Harold, who loves prop comedy on audio podcast.
But it's not, well, I was going to fill it in, but thank you, Aaron. But the fact is that it's, if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, the largest determining factor now is drones, and is going to be drones, and actually. That's thumb dexterity is probably is the biggest requirement.
Harold, we can't have fatties flying those drones.
They're gonna get grease on all the controllers and Cheeto residue.
Do you know how much chorizo I eat? I can't be flying drones eating chorizo and fry bread. I gotta control myself.
He's out of control, this guy.
Andrew Tate. Sorry to bring him up, but this is like the role model for people like Hegseth. There's some horrible video of Andrew Tate smoking a hookah in shorts. Like it's just they're embarrassing.
Cut to the clip.
model of masculinity, right? This is what they. Where's the damn chat?
I don't think smoking is great for your lungs either.
Okay, here we go. You do take a look at this. I put the link in the
cool.
chat.
It does look fucking cool.
Man, I do miss me a cigarette.
This is
it's
their
an
idea of masculinity. And this is, I will give a visual description for those who are on audio only. It is multiply, rapist, human trafficker, just overall piece of shit, not particularly bright, but taps into the worst of young male humanity. Andrew Tate sitting on a couch in short shorts, smoking a hookah, drinking tea with piles of hash
Rolexes
and piles of Rolexes.
He starts off he's pumping iron,
Yeah, he's
whatever.
just
He's just pumping
he's
iron.
doing some
I mean, this
shoulder
is
squats.
literally the level
presses.
of,
He's in a mansion too, which seems to be like seaside or something like that. So
Yeah.
great when
somewhere
when climate
without an
change sucks that
extradition
into-
treaty, assumedly, since he's being rape allegations every country he sets down on. He showed up in Florida.
What currency is that?
I can't tell.
Anyway, he's got a whole bunch of Rolexes and shit.
But this is
this has got 15 million views on X.com, and it is by the Tate official uni account, university.com. Fuck, who didn't buy university.com to keep these people from having it?
But this is this kind of weird, performative, misogynistic, horrible, rapey. That's the vision of masculinity that these people all embody, right?
He has no friends. There is no one else but him in this. It is just a pure narcissistic fantasy of I have all of this conspicuous consumption. Everyone bow down to how great I am because no one else will like him otherwise. You have no actual meaningful connections. You are not loved. Your mother doesn't love you, obviously. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this. And he's just taking his revenge out on the world by being a piece of shit.
Well, of course everyone hates you, Bucko.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking the question, what's happening to the women and children? And
women and children where specifically? Just in the...
So we see all the men with their shaved heads getting deported to El Salvador.
From the
But
US, yeah.
people are like, what's happening to the women and children? And there is what is referred to as Detention Center Alley in Louisiana. And
which also happens to be in Cancer Alley.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just a really great place. And that's where a lot of the families are being taken. And I've also seen that they're trying to create, what is it called? Tender age detention centers. And they did that back in 2018, where they had detention centers specifically for immigrant minors, unaccompanied minors, and it seems like they're firing that back up. So,
and of course, these are largely private owned. Geo Group is one of the companies that owns a bunch of them down there, with a horrible human rights record. So this is also a profiteering scheme, right? Fascism is always profitable for the people who work the machinery of fascism. And that's definitely what we're seeing. Tender aged, detention.
That's what they call. That's the official.
That was the official what they were called in 2018. I haven't seen them being referred to as exactly that title. They're just called.
Sorry, what title?
centers.
Tender aged shelters.
Detention. Yeah, tender age shelters.
They call them shelters. Shelters with cages and locks, and you can't leave. Yeah.
And they did this back in 2018, and it was a big thing where immigrants were being split up and separated, and
this was infants and young children.
Yeah, like babies.
I mean, when we're talking tender age, we're talking babies, literal babies separated from their families. Which, to be fair, the Democrats weren't a whole lot better. This inhumanity is bipartisan, but like with everything else, the evil just gets on steroids with the Republicans. But this is a bipartisan agreement that brown babies can be locked up.
Yeah. The Children Thrive Action Network, CTAN, are deeply concerned by reports that the Trump administration is actively making plans to once again jail families with children in ICE detention facilities. Yeah. So
Even a Department of Homeland Security advisory committee found that, quote, detention is never in the best interests of children. Gee.
Really?
Gee, even the Homeland Security Advisory Committee found that detention is never in the best interests of children. You mean traumatizing and imprisoning children is not in their best interests?
Weird.
I don't know. I traumatize and imprison my child all the time, and they're just like they're just doing great. Their math scores are up. Like, Jesus Christ, this is awful. God damn it.
If it doesn't go down the worst road, which is like just scaling this up way more, if eventually this is like these detention centers are shut down and people are freed, what happens to the people who have been in these centers and have had their brains altered because of
lifelong trauma, intergenerational trauma. And, some people will probably be able to sue and get some sort of restitution, which isn't the same as not being traumatized. But most, they're poor and immigrant. And
I was going to say, if you want to know what will happen, Hannah, let's look at Native Americans, because it's like this is just a reboot of residential schools and shackling children. Mm-hmm. Like this is just it's the same fucking thing over and over, and it's going to lead to like what happens with us. And I have intergenerational trauma from my grandma being in a residential school and like all of that. So it's like
So it's just starting another cycle.
It's just a new one. We're just doing it again, and this time instead of natives, it's going to be these children of immigrants, and they're going to have all this horror that they're going to have to live with. So
I was going to say there's that saying that came from around 2018, and I think it's worth repeating, which is the cruelty is the point. Right? They're in their mind, they're just like, well, if we treat them like fucking garbage, they're going to stop coming here. And we also just like to treat people like garbage.
It's also very tied. It's very tied into this now quite growing vocal pronatalism, which is have more babies. And that's why, Elon Musk is running around.
You need to make the connection clearer for me.
I will. Yeah. I'll bring it home, Aaron. Trust me on this one. Let me cook. The pronatalism, which is we're not having enough babies. All the tech bros who are saying the real threat isn't climate change, it's population collapse. Trump talking about giving a $5,000 bonus for having babies, but very explicitly, this is about great replacement theory, which is the idea that white people are being replaced. So the pronatalism argument is very much explicitly a white nationalist, a fascist, white nationalist, white supremacist argument, and keeping brown and black babies out of the country and bribing women, which doesn't work anywhere, by the way, bribing white women to have more babies is part of their strategy of trying to make a white America. Everything that lived in the shady corners of Western Washington State and Idaho, and where all the Nazi camps were and all the people went to build the Aryan nation, is now just official policy in the White House. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. This is exactly the white nationalist, the white supremacist ideology is now they're attempting to put it into national law.
There is a whole conversation to be had about like the demography of a lot of Western countries, where as soon as you get rich, you stop having as many babies because you go from being like, we're an agrarian society where you need to have 17 children because half of them are going to die and you need farm hands, to being a industrialized urban society where children are literally an economic liability, right? I mean, they are a complete suck on resources. You need to work in order to make money, to pay rent. And like, it becomes literally irrational from an economic point of view to have children. And then they're like, oh, why? Why aren't people having more babies? Plus the whole, like, the boomer cohort needs to be, we need to support our elderly people and we need more workers. So what did they do? We brought people in. We started bringing people in, growing the population. Also makes GDP line go up. That also has another thing to it. But of course, this is the rejection of that. We need to keep growing the population, but we also need to keep growing GDP. But we hate immigrants, so we're not going to do that. So this is why they want to get rid of abortion. This is why this is why they're bribing people with their own money to have more babies. Of course, when the Democrats are like child tax credit or whatever, that's socialism.
Well, it's crazy because they're only offering here in America $5,000 to have a baby, which, like, again, having a kid, that shit is so expensive. That $5,000 doesn't even cover you walking in and sitting in the room.
I mean, there was an
Labor Day.
average estimate. It's
especially
like
in
up to
America.
18 is about $170,000 for a typical child.
I just had to
0
buy
18.
a Switch 2 for my kid. You know how much that shit costs?
And you couldn't even hang out with the nerds online.
No, I couldn't.
This is going to sound really stupid coming from somebody who, this is not a flex. I don't mean it to be as a flex, but like, I don't have to pay out of pocket for healthcare. So I don't know what the cost is to have a child.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just they're like, if you go to a hospital to have the birth, like, I've seen people be like, this is how much this costs. This is how much this costs. Or it's like, this is $60,000 just to have a child not die.
You should just be squatting in the Amazon warehouse and dropping them and then moving on with your shift
I was peeing into my bottle and then a baby came out.
So like they said,
it's 170,000 wasn't the birth.
Yeah,
cost.
I'm just talking about the birthing
raising a
procedure.
child.
Oh, no,
that can be tens of
I'll tell you.
thousands.
I'll tell you right now. So just looking at it, just for delivery and care for the mother is $13,000. That's just delivering. Like that's not including all the appointments leading up to it. That's not including any prenatal care, any of that stuff. That's just you walking into the room. And then and that might not even be including like giving you epidurals or, God forbid, if you have to have like a C-section or any other kind of complications. This is like if everything goes smoothly for that one day that you're in labor, it's $13,000.
So they're talking about paying for less than half of the cost of birth in America.
Here's an idea. Here is an idea. If we want to make it more economically accessible for people to have families, maybe give them medical care for free.
Right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe give them child tax credits to help support them.
Maybe take that burden off.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Our country is so against people having free shit, or at least like the illusion of free shit. Like we in America, like we can't handle it. Like even right now, so when I worked in homeless services, the fact that homeless people would get like maybe a free box of food or like food stamps or whatever, that drives people in fucking insane. They're like, well, they have to work for it. They have to. It's like, why? Why do they have to? Why can't they just have food? Why can't they just have medicine? But it's like the fact that they're not working for it means they're not deserving of it. And the only reason they're in these situations is because they brought it on themselves. And like the fact that we can't let it go. That it's okay for people to have free food, water, medication, whatever. We just in America, we can't handle it. It's so. I mean, that's how
America has kept it, because this actually leads. Why don't we go into the collecting student loans? Because this is a very direct correlation about why we ended up with a student loan debt crisis in America. But Sam, why don't you take it away?
Just like the government's like, hey, we're gonna basically start collecting on all these loans, and it's like an unfathomably amount of money, and like a lot of people can't
These are
afford
collecting
it.
on the ones that have defaulted for more than 270 days. Yep.
Yeah.
Which Biden had put a pause on.
Yeah, so they're now going to collect, and they're going to basically do whatever they can to get that money. And I can't remember who's the blonde, awful lady who talks a lot. I don't remember her name.
I think that's just all of Fox News.
Yeah, it's all
and every
throw a dart at anyone on Fox News. But she's like, this is like $1 trillion that's on the table that we need back as Americans. But then it's like, why don't you just fucking tax the rich people? You get that back so quick, but again, can't do it.
Well, but they are explicitly doing. They're cutting it. The richest 1% responsible for nearly a third of unpaid taxes, about $205 billion annually. And the current response to that is to fire the people who audit rich people, literally. So this is it's another transfer up, but it goes deeper than that. And I think, Sam, it really talks to what you were saying about America and that the fear of anybody getting something for free besides you, particularly if they don't look like you, this is all so cultivated and intentional. And the student debt crisis, a lot of it started, you can look, there was Nixon, a Nixon consultant or advisor named Roger Freeman in 1970 who talked about we are in danger of producing an educated proletariat. That's dynamite. There was also the Powell memo, which we've talked about before, which was a memo that was laying out basically American capitalism's response to the upheavals in the 60s, which was social movements, but was also labor movement. If we don't talk about that as much, but there were wildcat strikes, there was radical labor movements, particularly the Black Power struggle moved into the labor movement, and the Powell memo was a response to this. And both of these, and this was quite a policy, is if we take what happened after World War II with the GI Bill and suddenly higher education was affordable, people were becoming educated, their expectations for a better future, they understood what was going on in the world, you need to stop that. You need to stop that. And the price of education started skyrocketing, and we now have nearly $2 trillion in student debt. And then it became, of course, extremely profitable to be loaning people this money. And I think that you can take that right up to today, where the Trump administration is attacking higher education, and they're using Gaza, because that's what all the global horrible people are doing, is using Palestine and Palestinians as the means to put in the worst thing you could possibly do. And it's to attack the very idea of education and knowledge. And it's required, right? That's what's required. If people actually understand what's going on in the world, you're like, wait, everything that everybody in charge is doing is stupid and hurting me. Maybe we should do something slightly different. If we keep them ignorant and keep them full of disinformation by AI chatbots on the social platforms that we've built, and they don't get that higher education, and if they go to college, all they're going to learn how to do is do the thing we're teaching them to do and learn nothing about how the world actually works, then you keep going as you're going until everything's dead.
Well, if you take out a personal loan and then pay off your student debts, then you can just declare bankruptcy.
Wait, what?
Well, because you can't declare bankruptcy on student loans.
Yeah.
Right. But if you take out a personal loan to pay it all off, then you can pay. But then you also have to have collateral in order to pay off that student loan, or to get that loan. Anyway,
there's got to be a loophole somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a
credit
loophole,
cards
which is-
where they just give it to you for free,
No,
where they just like hand it
loophole
out.
is we've got to like tear this shit down.
Mr. Simpson said, tear it down.
That something you said there about like keeping people stupid with like AI and disinformation or whatever dovetails nicely into a little magazine piece that I found in Politico. Because move over, boomers, Gen Z is now the most gullible generation. Basically, they're talking about how, yeah, it's just another data point on how big tech is monetizing brain rot and destroying journalism and undermining the ability of human civilization to persist by eroding our ability to make sense of anything. But apparently, this is getting increasingly pronounced in young people. And there's this kind of I like this quote here from Dr. Joel Breakstone, who did a study on this, and it's like there's this myth of the digital native. That's because some people have grown up with digital devices. They are equipped to make sense of the information that those devices provide, and they tested that, and the results were sobering. So a Stanford study showed that they showed high school students a misleading video about voter fraud in the U.S. showing ballot stuffing. The footage was actually from Russia. So out of 3,446 high schoolers, and I hope you're not looking at this, guess how many spotted the fake?
None?
1 in 5.
3.
You looked at the piece of paper. You looked at the yeah, it's 3. 3 were able to spot the true origin.
3 out of how many?
3,446. And
Wait,
according
three individuals?
3 individuals. So
3 out of
basically 1 in 1,000.
Woo! Yeah, I've been trying to, along with climate change, I've been trying to do media literacy and get that funded forever, because media literacy is one of the core survival traits for humanity at this point.
Yeah, that they're basically showing that, like, yeah, media literacy is like one of the problems here is that, like, if you're a high school student or whatever, like, you just haven't lived a long enough life to have like a baseline reality. And like, I as a high school student probably would have fallen for a bunch of dumb stuff too. And they kind of point out, like, yeah, you can live longer and have a baseline reality, but I also want to be like, yeah, but how about those millions of Fox News viewers though? Like, all those fucking boomer low T people who are just, anyway. But according to their stats here, 60% of Gen Zers, so that's age 13 to 26, get their news from social media weekly, with 45% of 18 to 29-year-olds using TikTok for news. Which, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but of course there are issues with how social media runs, and we're probably all very much familiar with them.
I mean, the idea of media literacy, the strength of social platforms is that they can break out of established narratives. One of the reasons they were attacking TikTok, a big reason, was that that's where people were starting to see what was actually happening in Gaza. That there was
you have a direct line to the horrifying. Because it's just, you have regular people on the ground being like, oh, I just got bobbed. Look at me. This is horrible.
And it shifted opinion on it. But on the other hand, they're so easy to manipulate, and the people who control those platforms can encourage and allow and enable the manipulation in ways that align with their interest. And so what media literacy is being able to know that you've got to actually check things out, that you don't just repost and like, that you actually have to have some baseline understanding of what's really happening in the world, and the ability to do that. And that is part of destroying public education. And this is a decades long process also. It's not just higher education with student loans. It's destroying public education in general. And this is just a decades long thing. That is what, now we've got a fucking WWE leader running the Department of Education. This is quite intentional, that you want a passive, ignorant population that's unable to distinguish disinformation from information.
Sure. I mean, like, it's not like they created TikTok with a nefarious, TikTok and all these social things kind of emerged out of the internet, and there's a whole lot of dynamics into it.
Wasn't TikTok originally for dancing? Like, wasn't that its whole purpose?
Musically?
Yeah, it was like a music type of app.
Yeah. I mean, there's these sorts of things, but then people started using it for other things, and it grew. But yes, of course, you're right to point out that the mechanisms within social media kind of run counter to truthful content, like the shocking shit and the fake stuff that, like, they use this example of putting beef tallow on your skin to make yourself look beautiful, or like saying sunscreen is a scam, despite dermatologists being like, no, don't do that. The dermatologist video being like, no, don't do that, doesn't perform nearly as well as the hundreds of thousands of video being like, I go to my McDonald's air fryer, or like my McDonald's fryer, and then take out the beef towel and put it on my face, and now I look great. Like, this is...
But it's also, there's a lot of intention there as well. I mean, the most obvious case in point being Elon Musk buying Twitter and using that significantly to get Donald Trump in office, where he can now destroy the entire government and loot contract after contract to his own companies.
I have more to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of intention as well. There's the fact that there's negligence, which is all the people who ran social platforms had the research and understanding that what they were doing is extremely destructive of civil society and the strength of information, but it was so profitable they kept doing it. And then there was the active, let us bring about the end of all good things so that we can loot more of the Zuckerbergs and the Musks and so forth.
Yeah, there's a term that I like that sort of describes those kinds of people. I think it kind of comes from the... Oh, do you need to get that? There's a term that I like, kind of comes from like the meta-crisis narrative discourse, and the term is hyper agents. And like you basically have these dynamics create what they call hyper agents who have a lot of power over systems. And it's not necessarily like you can be a billionaire and not have a lot of power. You can just have a lot of money. But like being the head of a government, but also having a several billions of dollars gives you a lot of power. So yeah, Elon and Trump or whatever, those are like the classic kind of hyper agents now. So yes, they can move these systems to their advantage, and that is what wealth accumulation ultimately moves you towards. You get these hyper agents and these kinds of dynamics.
And then there's the
So
question
fun.
about how much agency do they really have? And this is a real question because everything
Sure.
they're doing is leading to extinction of life on Earth.
To restore the harmony with nature means to renew our reverence for the wonder of all living things.
One of the great pieces of news: 80% of the world's coral reefs have been hit by what's now the fourth major bleaching event. And a bleaching event of coral is they get bleached because all the life is stripped out of them. Scientists are desperately trying to find ways, from playing the sounds of a coral reef that attracts life to finding super surviving heating ones. All of those are stopgap measures to try and keep coral reefs alive. It's because the oceans are getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And until we stop burning fossil fuels, they will keep getting hotter. And eventually we're going to see the collapse of ocean life, which will mean the collapse of a lot of life on Earth. And the response of these people is, Trump. One of the reasons we know about this and the heat things is because of NOAA, the agency
And
that
the Ark?
tracks this stuff.
Yeah. He brought on the
Two
ark.
of everything?
He brought two corals, and he made them mate.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to inject a little hope into the coral reef story. Scientists have observed many corals around the globe actually adapting to the changing water temperatures. Not all of them, but one of the things that they want to do is taking polyps and dispersing them so there's a wide diversity among all of the coral reefs. So the ones that have started adapting can then go and continue adapting elsewhere. And, so they're
Trying to accelerate evolution.
Planet Earth and its moon. One can imagine travelers from another planet wondering if they might find beings similar to themselves here, or any signs of life, even a few quivering cells.
You said there's two paths, and I think I've quoted this before on this very podcast.
Socialism or barbarism?
Socialism or barbarism. And it fundamentally it was Emma Goldman in the 1930s talking about the rise of fascism, and she was spot on. The stakes just keep getting higher, and we're talking about all life on Earth. Whatever you want to call socialism. But one of the things I will say, having been a socialist since, I don't know, I was 18, I think is when I was able to articulate it, that it was like, oh, should we be destroying everything so a few people can get rich, or should we socially determine what's good for everybody? I think I'll go with that one. But being a socialist in America was a very, very lonely thing.
You would think you would be social, like you have connections with other people. It's kind of baked into the word.
It was about being in groups of 200 or 300 people in a 300 million person country, desperately hoping to do something. I will say that as the stakes rise, one of the key things that we have to remember is that just as everyone could say, oh, I never could have imagined someone like Trump coming into power, that an obviously corrupt, idiotic, I know, I have a sound effect that it's our local fire department.
Oh, it's just like, are you about to get bombed?
Yeah, I get bombed a lot here. Is that nobody could imagine that happening? Not in my America, as the liberals like to say, ignoring all of American history. Is that we also, the crisis is opening up opportunities to come up with things in the positive direction you were talking about, Aaron. And 2 data points on that is in New York City, where we've had shittier mayor after shittier mayor.
Yeah, y'all keep doing that to yourselves. What's that
But we now have the number 2 runner of the Democratic primary is Zoran Mamdani, who's a socialist, quite openly a socialist. And the only person doing better than him is Andrew Cuomo, who's our corrupt. Is he a rapist or just a sexual assaulter? I don't know.
Is that guy still around? I thought he was totally canceled.
Oh, no, but he's coming back. And all of the people, including a lot of the Democratic establishment and a lot of the labor movement, are backing him up because I don't know why. And where his real money coming from, of course, is people who fund Donald Trump. So, go figure it out. But number 2 right now is Zoran Mamdani, who's a socialist and an open socialist, and includes, and I think that there's a reason why. Now he's got things stacked against him, which is going to be people are going to spend billions of dollars to stop a socialist, literally, from being from being mayor of New York City, because the danger of
you really think billions of dollars? Whoa.
Oh yeah, no question. The danger of a socialist running America's largest city, to them, is existential. It's existential. You saw what they did to Bernie. In order to get, they will. There is no limit to the amount of money they will spend to stop this from happening. But he's got a massive grassroots movement, and it's because people are like, because everything he wants to do, which most socialists want to do, are extremely popular, like lowering the price of groceries by having city-owned grocery stores that take profit out of it. He doesn't, and I think he's got a really interesting approach on climate, which is he doesn't center questions of climate change in his campaign. He centers solutions in his policies. So he's talking about remaking a third of New York City's public schools to be using renewable energy, to be energy efficient, to be safer and healthier for the kids. He's talking about his quality of life campaign is about what are the things we can actually do. And climate change is a major quality of life issue, right? Your housing is going to be destroyed. Your life is going to be uninsurable, all of these things. And I think that there's a reason why. And I organized in New York City from 1990. That's when I moved there, and was, the idea that a credible Democratic Socialist candidate would be in the second place there would unfeasible. I would have assumed the revolution had already come for that to happen. And if you look at amongst the Democratic Party, there was a poll of which leaders best exemplify the values of the Democratic Party. Right now, AOC, a Democratic Socialist, is number 1. Harris is 2, and Bernie Sanders is 3. So you've got 2 Democratic Socialists that the majority of people that lead in terms of Democrats thinking it. We cannot imagine that things won't change, because the instability of everything that's happening right now means that things as they are simply not working. They are falling apart. They will not continue on as they are. And it's too easy to be like, well, don't call yourself a socialist because people in America don't like socialism. No, people in America like to fucking eat, right? People in America like to have a house over their head. People in America want to not be dying of easily preventable diseases unless you're a Texas parent who allows your kids to die of measles and says you still won't give them vaccines. But for the most part, people in America want these things. And as their inability to do it, this is why they're militarizing everything. Because as the systems start to fail and only work for the extremely wealthy, the ability to start presenting an alternate vision is going to be there. And we need to be able to feel that. Otherwise, the centrism leading to fascism is all there is. So I think there's a tremendous, in the crisis of the system, there's a huge amount of hope to be had. See, they hear my message. They hear my message. They're trying to target me. If this is my last message from Newburgh, New York.
Yo, don't tell them where you live.
Yeah, because they don't know that. But I mean, it really is the failure of imagination for people who've been fighting their whole lives for a better world and feeling like we're losing is as dangerous as the ideology of the fascist.
Yeah, the inability to imagine a better future is a prerequisite for just acquiescing to being dominated by people who just want to take all your wealth and power away from you.
Yeah.
If we were able to see our destinies manifest themselves visually.
Let me throw one more thing in because I think it's and Sam, you actually made a video on this, which is looking again at the ability for the dominant ideas to be challenged. Kneecap, an Irish band, was at Coachella, and they had. Does everyone have the sign? Let me get that sign handy.
It's just like a big, like neon-looking sign that says like "fuck Israel, free Palestine," and then there was like one more. It was like America's, or you are all complicit in. Like
Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Yeah, I mean it was a
it is being enabled by the U.S. government, who arm and fund Israel despite their war crimes.
So of course they got roundly attacked, by our leading lights like Sharon Osbourne. They got roundly attacked. People saying they should have their work visa and done it. However, the result was the rest of their tour sold out because actually. Being in favor of the Palestinian people and against genocide is actually a pretty popular position to take, which, we saw Harris potentially be losing the White House because she wouldn't take that rather bold position of not blowing up babies. I think this is where, just the signs that there are so many cracks in the system of their genocidal intent, of their ecocidal intent, and every peep of resistance, every time people show up outside a Tesla dealership to try and take down Musk, every time people challenge an ICE agent on the street to protect their neighbors from being kidnapped, every act of resistance is cumulative. And even if we don't feel and see the result of that act of resistance in the moment we're doing it, it doesn't matter. It actually makes an enormous difference. And that's really the hope I have, is what we do know. And I'm just going to say it again. The system we're in now isn't lasting much longer. As we know it, as the world has worked, it ain't lasting much longer. It's just hit the physical limits. So we need to be ready and confident in being able to point out a picture of a better world. And a lot of people are with us. A lot of people are with us.
Undeniable.